This is a coping mechanism podcast.
This is a coping mechanism podcast.
Look, this is
This is a coping mechanism podcast.
Husk. Greetings, one and all, and welcome to another exciting episode of This is a Coping Mechanism podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ted, along with my wonderful friend and co-host,
Bessie, as always, and join us on how we cope with things through this satire life of ours with movies, media, mysteries, and more.
More.
What are we getting into to do? What are we getting into to do?
What are we going to do? What are we getting to do today?
What are we getting into today?
So now we should just start every show with Dirty Sandstorm.
Literally.
Today we'll be getting in on the 1989 film
88.
88? Really?
Yep.
Oh damn. John Carpenter's They Live.
It's sci-fi horror.
Yeah. I've been wanting you to watch this movie.
I know.
Since
This has been on the list for a hot minute, so we finally did it.
I think this was the first topic that I came up with.
I think it was one of like the top few.
Where I was like, there's so much conversation in this movie to be had, and I also just really wanted you to watch it because I grew up.
I really liked it. I'm surprised I hadn't seen it. It definitely felt kind of like a classic movie from the 80s.
Yeah.
We'll give you guys a synopsis if you haven't watched it. Nada, played by Roddy Piper.
Roddy Piper.
Exactly.
He's a wrestler. I don't know if you know that. Okay.
That's why all his fighting scenes were so good.
Yeah, that's why he was jacked as shit.
That too. He's a wanderer without meaning in his life, and he discovers a pair of sunglasses capable of showing the world the way it truly is. As he walks the streets of LA, Nada notices that both the media and the government are comprised of subliminal messages meant to keep the population subdued, and that most of the social elite are skull-faced aliens bent on world domination. With the shocking discovery, he fights to free humanity from the mind-controlling aliens.
It's crazy, right?
Yes. It's such a good idea.
Yeah.
It was like, damn, this is a good idea, and it was, I don't want to say long ago, because the 80s wasn't long ago, but for something that
a long time ago
still kind of plays in some of the ideas today of alien world domination. It was such a cool twist of but no, we're gonna live amongst you, make ourselves look the same by kind of bending whatever light in this dimensional way.
Yeah.
And then live amongst you, controlling you, and you don't even know. It was usually it's just aliens or predators coming to the earth and fucking you up, and that's the domination.
No, we want to.
They what is that word? Integrate.
Yeah.
And it's scarier that way almost because you don't know.
There's a line at the very end of the movie where one of the characters is talking about the aliens, they're free enterprisers.
Yeah.
They're here and to work our planet to the bone.
Yep.
And then move on.
Exactly. And it seems it sounded like they have kind of conquered other planets, and they just have happened to now be on Earth. But you're seeing Roddy's character, Nada, once he puts on these glasses, it's not just straight up yeah, okay, you see someone who looks like a human and they have this skull alien face. It was mainly the messages.
Yeah.
You'd see these billboards, newspapers.
Say reproduce, consume, stay asleep.
Yeah.
I love the one on the
no
money.
Independent thoughts, marry, God is your money.
Yeah,
but then
the money is this is your God.
And you're just holy fuck. And then you take the glasses off and it's just go to the beach. Oh, yeah. It's a dating profile. Oh, you're just
no, not
the subtle messaging that your brain doesn't really click and see, but your eye just sees that first.
And
so it was just off the bat of that, I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. And then he starts seeing people, what the fuck?
I was wondering,
those are cool glasses too. They actually weren't ugly. They were oh, those are stylish glasses. I would wear those.
I have 4 pairs of those in this house because they made a board game that's right over there. And
shit.
the cards you have to put on the glasses to see.
I love that.
And it works like in the movie, and then so we got like 4 pairs of them in place.
That's amazing.
So you had never heard of this movie until I brought it
Never.
up. I didn't tell you anything about it, really. So
I think you just said it's a John Carpenter's movie.
Yeah,
that was
you were
it.
like, were you expecting like any of this, or for it to like kind of go the way it went? And
Well, I like John Carpenter, so I figured it'd have something I would like. But I really just, besides the acting being kind of not great, which again is kind of the fun of it. Yeah, I was like just really intrigued on how they kind of just
convey all this. Like,
yeah, like you're in it with him, almost like what the fuck is happening? Why? Who knows? Like human wise, or like the power and the elite, like working with them for, compensation for doing so.
You learn everything at the same time,
and that's what I
liked. And
because it's really just him and his friend Frank, who's played by Keith David. And then there's like some side characters, like he meets a lady, Holly, Meg Foster, but it's mainly him and Frank trying to be like, what the fuck can we do and what the fuck are we gonna do?
Yeah, and it's
after a long ass fight.
I know. I couldn't wait for you to see that, and I put it in my notes like the fight that doesn't end.
Which I saw that John Carpenter said he meant for it to be that long.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's funny, because I was just like, goddamn, half this goddamn movie is them fighting.
It's a really
just
short
beating their
movie.
ass like, put the fucking glasses on. No, put the fucking glasses on. No, put the fucking glasses on.
I love at the end of that fight where he like swings the board at him.
Yes.
Bashes his car. He's like, oh shit, I'm sorry.
He's like, I didn't mean to break your car. My bad. He was like, God damn it. One thing I was curious about, though, just like off the cuff real fast, it didn't seem like the aliens were with humans, like intimately or partner-wise. Did you get that vibe too? Like they kind of would talk shit and keep to themselves because they knew who was who? Or do you think they're also trying to take over by like impregnating us and all those things? That's the only thing I was curious about, just because.
Well, they show that at the end.
I don't remember that.
Oh, the last scene of the movie is an alien banging a woman.
Oh, they did. Yeah.
And,
so yeah, it does happen.
But I think
because I was just thinking about Frank's wife and kids, and I was like, oh, are they gonna show us his wife and kids and they're like part of it or something? Yeah. Or like this hybrid being. I
think that would have been better. I don't think
but yeah, she was
the impregnation happens, but I think there's another line in the movie where he talks like we could one of those like broadcasts that's happening in the background. It's like we could be pets, we could be slave labor, we could but at the end of the day we're just like cattle. And I think that's the thing, is they don't see us as like people. It's just like money. They're like, oh, they bang us because they're bored, because they can.
And they're like, haha.
And it's like, oh, it integrates better. Yeah. To just be like, oh.
Because it shows you that the reason we can't see these skull-faced aliens is because of this satellite.
Yeah, there's a signal going out.
It's like this sound, and that's what's keeping this
like whole image of world going, like always in the background.
Right. And so because that's on, unless you have those glasses, you only see what you actually see in front of you.
I wrote down this like, don't you think that it's like a radical conspiracy theorist? It's like a wet dream, Right,
and there's people that really believe. Like, we were watching it and we were like, people really believe this is a thing.
Yeah.
Do you?
No.
I'm just curious. I wouldn't judge you. I'm just curious. I don't either.
To the extent that there's aliens controlling everything, is that what you're asking?
Or I guess that there's just like some multi-dimensional living amongst us, we can't see it type of thing.
I guess see
like
that
the control of it
as being I do believe in other dimensions and stuff, and maybe there are different dimension beings that live
like
outside
are existing.
Yeah, but what I think is the part of this show that I see or this movie that I see is more real is like, oh yes, there is like, a governing class that, having money makes it easier to get more money to then hoard and compound resources.
Right, and overconsume. And
yeah, definitely. And do I think that there's a group of these people who are kind of like that's their whole life is doing that? Yeah, I do.
Yeah, of course.
Do I think they're aliens?
Right.
No.
They're just shitty human beings.
Yeah, they're just shitty people.
Because this feels still so like relevant to today's like issues, which is why it's kind of like, oh shit. But John Carpenter, his response was he made this movie out of like Ronald Reagan's kind of like terms, like the Reaganomics and what was happening to the middle class in the 80s. And he said he continues to believe the relevance of the rich getting richer conspiracy, no matter, like, that's the heart of the film. Like, they're still here making more money than ever. They're still among us. And that's exactly what it is.
And that's still to this day what's happening.
I feel like we see it more because of social media. It's, like, really in our face of how extreme these classes are. Like, I mean, look at fucking Elon Musk having trillions of dollars or something. It's, like, fucking insane.
Yeah. That's the thing is, it's not even just... It's like they say in the movie where there's more people are getting absurdly rich and there's more people getting absurdly poor. Like
in the same, we're trying to make the rich richer and the poor poor.
Yeah.
I feel like that was actually said like within this past presidency debates or so. It was like they're trying to make the poor richer and the rich poor, and I'm like, do you not see the fucking
Yeah, like that's what you want.
Like what?
And yeah, it's a lot of this movie.
It's today.
Yeah, especially like with what's going on.
Of course.
Right now with, you know, the whole CEO assassination and all that. Like you watch this movie and there's, you know, whenever he puts on the glasses and he starts like coming to terms with what happened.
Yeah, because there's a group of the resistance, if you want to call them that do know what they live amongst because they've made these glasses and they're like, we just have to a builder group to fight back, which I don't really know how you're fighting against like aliens and that type of technology if they're somehow like hiding themselves in plain sight. I don't know what a few guns and grenades will do, but still there are people who know we need to fight back. Like they cannot do this.
And yeah, then they say in the movie like we need people who actually will like assault them. And it seems like a lot of the resistance is more they're trying to like just there's not a lot of the warrior people in the resistance. It's just people
like
kind
no
of like
action.
Yeah. And then that's the thing is this wanderer, not a Rowdy Piper character. He gets it, and then once he comes to terms with it, like in an hour.
He's like, what the fuck were you gonna do?
Yeah, like two cops who are aliens are like, hey, you stumbled onto something here and you can get ahead. Just come with us and calm down. And then
he's like, no, fuck you.
Yeah, it fucking kills him. And then that was the thing. I wrote down that like his actions from an outside point of view are like horrendous, terroristic.
Sure.
And
they even call him a terrorist.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh yeah, it's because there's a bunch of aliens. And I'm like, that shit's going on right now. Of like, you know, I don't think he's an alien.
No, yeah.
But this guy being like, oh, this is a monster.
Yes.
You know, the Luigi is it Mangione?
I didn't ever know really how to pronounce it, but yeah.
Yeah. But he's like
how he acted out in response to CEOs in a sense of being like, you guys aren't my fucking problem.
Yeah. And
I'm going to do what I need to do to make more money. And if you're hurt or can't get the care you need, sucks to suck.
Yeah.
And people are going to act out regardless on any form of that kind of suppression forever, you know? Like, people just start to be like, no, what the fuck? And go to these extremes.
I think, like, and I a part of it, I believe, is presented in this movie of, like, humans are animals.
Yes,
and you put an animal in a cage, and it'll be like, whatever. You keep feeding it, you know. You keep letting it consume, and you know you make sure all its needs
it's like
are
just
met.
Enough.
Yeah, just enough. Then
just enough of its needs are met to not like go wild.
Yeah, then it'll be fine. But you start like pushing that animal and cornering
giving it less and less,
and like making it survive on the bare minimum. Eventually, it will snap back.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we all saw what happened in Game of Thrones when Ramsay was fed to his fucking dogs. They're loyal. Not when they're starving.
Yeah.
You know?
And
so it's the same thing. And a lot of those subliminal messages still feel real today.
Yeah. I
like
was...
all the billboards, whether they be vacation or you need to buy this, or God forbid our phones now, like all of us are in a fucking trance, which they say that in the movie, they want us in a trance.
And like, and now it's not even just like the ads like that. It's, you know, people, you know.
Yeah, you should get this.
Influencers being
You'll
like,
have FOMO if you don't have it. Like,
yeah,
you need it.
Hey guys, I needed this more than anything else. This is a divider for drinks that go in your fridge, and it holds them separately.
And
I don't
how
know how
organized...
I lived beyond
exactly. And they're all paid ads.
Exactly.
Like this kind of like maximalist, we need all these things, when it's like, no, we don't. Should I like things organized? Do I need all those fucking things in my fridge to buy? No, because I can live without them.
You know, the reason I brought this up was, or when I thought of this topic originally was, now it's for some reason in the past year, like a bunch of this movie is really relevant. But whenever we first started talking about doing this show, and I thought of this, it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we could do about like ethical consumerism.
Right.
And had you heard about that term before?
I feel like I've maybe heard it thrown around, but never enough for me to really be like, what is ethically consuming?
Yeah.
You know?
And for any of you who don't know, the whole premise is that you vote with your dollar, and you make a choice every time you buy or consume something, and should every time you consume should you actively make an ethical choice to make sure that things are sourced ethically, produced ethically, you know, maintaining a like balanced status quo, whether it be through people, planet,
and at what time in like human existence would you, or do people say there was a time of like ethically consuming? Has that ever been a thing?
I think so. I'm
just genuinely asking because I don't know.
I think it wasn't until, this is, you know, I'm talking a bit out of my ass here.
Yeah.
But because I didn't consider that. But I think you really start getting in the idea of not ethically consuming like across the board, either with like industrialization,
right,
of being like, oh, we can manufacture things so fast
and cheap
that how do we like chase that dragon of maximizing cheap and mass production of any one thing. I
feel like you can't even get like food ethically now.
Yeah.
Because we're just like, oh, all these fucking people, oh, because we won't pay you enough, we'll make cheap food, or you get the animal produce that's not very clean or good, and, you know, so I'm more wondering genuinely, like, at what time in civilization was it more so that? Was it probably way before technology?
Yeah.
Where you probably just lived in your village or town, stayed there, and you traded, bought from the farmers and shit like that is all I can really think of.
Yeah, I guess, like, if you really want to dive into it, you could be like, oh, well, colonialism itself is kind of a enemy of ethically consumption.
But I could see the extreme of it now, why we need to, like, be more conscious of
and now it's like
consuming.
Is it even possible?
I don't think it is.
To do that. I don't think it is either. I think it's, you know...
Because even, like, when I look like the art I make, there's this big kind of movement with artists in, like, the oddities community of people asking, well, do you get your bones and bugs ethically? You can't really get anything ethically now. You can use the word sustainably. Because even if I said, oh yeah, this deer bone I found on the side of the road. Well, it wasn't ethical for it to be hit by a car because that's not natural. You know? So it's like this, you can use sustainable because that's a better... Ethics is like a moral thing, almost, you know? So it's hard to measure that. So I always just say, I sustainably source my things that aren't being killed for the sake of art.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I didn't kill this deer to make sure that I had a bone for this thing.
Yeah. So that's why I'm just like, it's just running in my head. I'm like, oh shit, when was a time where things were like really ethical ever?
I wrote the last thing I wrote down. I wrote down this like little thing that I wanted to read to you, if that's okay.
Of course.
But when it comes to ethical consumerism, how do we consider products that we are like required to buy from impossible sources, things like insurance, vehicles, taxes that go to programs and stuff that we don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
Right now, currently, LA is on fire.
Right.
And there's a very famous statistic going around that $21 million was cut from the fire department budget, and triple that amount of money was given to like the LAPD in the same budget. And how can you responsibly, have access to any of these things that you are required to have in the current day and age, and think about consuming or ethically opposed to them? And then I also said like phones and stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's what my first thought is like phones.
Yeah, because there's no ethical. I mean, maybe shout out in the comments. Is there an ethical cell phone that you can buy that's like, hey,
I guess maybe in a sense of, if anything could be ethical, it would be wiping like classes out. Like there wouldn't be a low or middle or high. Everyone being paid or living the same, and then you got everything from those people. Like I wouldn't feel as bad ethically getting a phone maybe from my neighbor that I know was paid the amount to make it, is taken care of, compared to it's people overseas being paid a couple cents.
Yeah,
and then
you're work in like shit conditions.
Exactly. So like I feel like only thing anything could be ethical is if we were all on the same playing field, but it's never been that.
Yeah.
But maybe if you have like a little village or your own like, what are those things called where people buy like land together and live off it together?
Like a fealty, or a.
Oh, there's a different word for it. Like a compound.
Yeah.
Like then
a
maybe.
Socialist barter system.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm thinking of now, because now everyone's just online thinking they need all these things and not realizing, how much has to be produced to even.
Get to that product that
because there's even like a movie on Netflix and even a new documentary, but the movie is a Spanish film from 2019 called The Platform, and it's this idea of like prisoners in this system. And there's 333 levels, 2 people on each platform. When they enter this kind of experiment, they're told you get 1 meal a day, what would you want? And that's what you'll get to eat. But you wake up every month on a different level. So because people are not eating their fair share, the people at the bottom are starving. And that's just what it feels like always, is the people at the top take too much, and then there's absolutely zero left for the bottom. Where if you just took what you needed, if we just all had what we needed, not wanted, we'd be fine. We would all have this more level playing field.
Right, like.
So or like the documentary, it was about where all these clothes go, and like, do I need to buy these things, and how they're in our oceans and our land, and fast fashion. Like, we don't need all these things, and this is where they end up, but we don't care about that,
Yeah, I learned about the clothes thing like pretty recently. About how
even like going to Goodwill, I'm like, that used to make me feel better about getting rid of stuff, and when I knew it just ended up in landfills, I was like, oh, this is not any better.
Yeah, they're
just throwing it in the trash.
There's more of a clothing surplus in the world than any other thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like
there's enough
people
clothes.
ain't fighting for shirts anymore.
Like there's enough for everyone to have enough, but because of how the system has kind of always worked, it's the top versus the bottom.
I think about like you mentioned this experiment, this documentary, and I think that's really fascinating, because we also we got to live that and see that like during COVID 2020. Yeah. I remember, we live in Texas. We have the store HEB, and they're a Texas-owned company, and I remember they like were running out of stuff, and they came out and said like, we haven't changed. We have not missed a single order or had a short shipment of anything. If everyone was just acting normally,
they literally had signs saying like, what, like 2 cases of water per person, because people were just overbuying it because they just fuck everybody else, which I get in a sense. Like, you do have to just worry about yourself and fend for yourself, but again, I feel like they've made us this way. Like, society has made us that way. Instead of being a community taking care of each other, it's a selfish thing that you only worry about you.
Yeah.
Who else is looking out for you, you know?
I am. Looking out for you.
We are.
I just, you know, I don't know. I think
COVID, like you said, was a good example of people over consuming what they needed.
For no reason.
Yeah.
For just the sake of,
because they can.
Yeah, because they can,
or
and
think
out of
they
like
should. Or fear.
Yeah, or fear.
Yeah, which is what people like, driven you by fear.
And I remember being like, I think we talked about this in the COVID episode of just being like, yeah, I would just like buy toilet paper and give them to people at work.
Yeah, my mom was one of those people that bought. I still don't buy toilet paper and paper towels now because my mom still, for some reason, has that mindset. I'm like, I'll just get them from you then.
Yeah. I remember like cases would go up on Amazon and just get like
or
those.
like diapers or like sanitizer on like Facebook Market. People were selling it for so much, and I'm just like, that's so fucked up.
Yeah, and it's
like, you know, someone needs that, and you're more worried about getting a profit out of it. It's fucking hand sanitizer. If the world was really ending, none of those things would matter because money won't matter.
They won't save you.
No.
Like, I guess it would kind of turn into a barter thing of like, what do you got?
Exactly.
But at that point, why are you selling them for cash?
Exactly. Cash means nothing when the world ends.
I think.
Which is why in that movie they live. This is your god.
Yep.
This piece of fucking money.
This piece of paper.
Yep.
And like, I don't know. To me, I see the idea of ethical consumerism as an interesting philosophy
for sure
that you can look up, but I think that you can practice it day to day.
Oh, I think you can too, yeah.
Like, I don't buy Nestle products, you know?
Yeah.
Because there's some lines that, like, not huge things, but like, I haven't bought Bluebell ice cream since they killed all those people, and the homemade vanilla bean Bluebell was my favorite ice cream for my entire life, and I haven't eaten it since Bluebell killed all those people, because I was like, okay, everyone should have a line.
Yeah.
And to me, my line was that like hundreds of people got sick and a bunch of people got killed.
Intermission. Intermission.
So yeah, Bluebell killed a bunch of people. I stopped eating Bluebell. Nestle, all that stuff came out about how they Nestle and Hershey ran slave farms in order to get cocoa as cheap as it was so they could keep producing Hershey products as cheap as they were, and how they would steal water rights all over the world from different indigenous people so that way they all would die of dehydration, and then they would steal the water so that way they could make cheap bottles of water.
That reminds me, not exactly of, but how you mentioned like the fires and how they were willing to like pay prisoners like $5 to go like help put out the fires, and then just like because you think you can pay them that little to put their lives on the line because they're prisoners, like that's so fucked.
Exactly. And it's like
that's not ethical at all.
Yeah, and you know, there's stuff like that where it's these like big
private owned company.
Yeah, private situations where I think you can, like, can me or you affect prisoner work laws in California?
No.
Right,
you have to realize what's in your control.
Exactly. Like,
or what makes the difference or makes you feel better about what you are consuming or whatever.
Yeah, can I not buy Nestle water and candy bars and
easy,
you know, Bluebell ice cream? Be like, I don't need any of that. I mean,
well, it's like people that don't eat at Chick-fil-A or get Starbucks anymore because they donate to anti-LGBTQ
Yeah, or the union busting and stuff. Exactly, and it's like, I think that...
Like, will it really make a difference? Not really.
Yeah.
But if that's what you can do and say, like, I'm at least trying, then that makes a difference.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, I think that if... The only time...
There really are just more of us than them. So I feel like if we really actually came together and weren't so divided, we could way easier overthrow this idea of, like, we have no voice and we're just asleep, you know, like, just okay with it. You know, like, they live, we sleep. And that's exactly how they say it in.
And that's the thing is, like, in the movie, it's all about waking everyone up, getting rid of the signal, just showing everyone this is happening.
Yeah.
And then
but we show people that now, and it's fake. Oh, it's a conspiracy, and it's like, fuck.
Yeah.
It's like no winning.
That's the thing is, they have to do something to affect, which it does happen, and every time it does happen, I think people get...
We do.
It's like they get surprised that as a group they can have that much effect whenever you always could.
Yeah, that's true.
I have a really dumb example.
Let's hear it.
But it's true. But have you ever seen any of the Sonic the Hedgehog movies?
Mm-mm. I think I saw the first one.
So, like...
Jim Carrey's in it, right?
Yeah, he plays Dr. Eggman. I'm a big Sonic fan.
Okay.
But there was this leak of... from a trailer where it showed how they, like, originally designed Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so ugly.
Yeah, that
so
everyone...
bad. Yeah, that everyone...
said something and they redid it. Yeah. I remember that on Twitter.
Exactly. But I think it became more famous as, like, of the action that people have of, like, they were like, oh, we spent this many $1 million on the movie, and if this percentage of people are open about having a problem with it, that means that this percentage of people does have a problem with it, and they're not going to spend the money to see the movie.
Exactly.
We have to fix this.
Right. Now we should just do that across the board.
Yeah, if we just did that across the board, if we were just like, no, we're not going to...
Like, fuck you, no.
Yeah, fuck you, we're not
You would eventually have to be like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah.
But there's not enough
of
it, and I get it. You know, you can't either afford to, or that can't even be, like, in your mind scope of kind of resisting back, you know.
Yeah, I see it.
Other countries do it, but they're way smaller than we are too.
Exactly,
you know?
And they can kind of... in the episode we just recorded, we talked about, you know, you went to Germany over the holidays, and about how, like, they only keep fruit when it's in season, and
sure, yeah,
all this, because they actively are like, oh no, that's just kind of like the way it should be.
Right, we buy from our farmers and blah,
and,
blah.
You know, we cycle things as nature kind of says we should have them.
Yeah.
And not like, oh no, we're gonna pump the ground full of everything known to man, because when you want an avocado in deep December, you're gonna get it.
And even there, like, peppers and stuff were small. Like, they weren't like our big ass fucking peppers. So you're like, oh, are these what, like, natural peppers look like? They're big enough, but they're just not humongous, because you're not pumping them with whatever the fuck.
Like, have you ever seen a real chicken? You know,
they're tiny.
They're tiny little guys.
They're cute.
Anyway, but so yeah, like, I think I don't know, to me this grew so much of... I only had the idea to talk about, like, what do you ever go out of your way to, like, either buy something or not buy something because of what you know about a company or the person behind it?
Yeah, sometimes I'll kind of slip up and just have those moments of, like, well, I'm not making a fucking difference and this is more convenient for me and I know it. So I'll buy from it, like Amazon. I know I shouldn't, but I do. But I try to be better about it. Or, like, for Christmas gifts, I usually only shop on, like, Etsy and, like, go to farmers markets or, like, Austin gift shops where it's, like, vendors and stuff, because I want to buy from local people. I feel like that's where I really try. Or with some food, like, I know it's probably all fake, but I do try to get, like, the organic or the sustainably caught fish. Like, I do try, but I don't know if that's even real. Like, because I know they can just put whatever the fuck they want on those.
Whenever...
And I try to do those. I do try to do some things like that.
I think that, you know... I think that is, like, the best you can do.
Yeah, and that's all you can
I think
for.
I think a problem is that some people who are more extreme about this topic would be like, no,
I feel like that's how vegans are.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
How like the guy who thought of this was like, every time you consume, every time you spend $1, you're making a moralistic choice.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I guess how you could say that philosophically,
But I also didn't ask to be born, so I'm just now living the best way I can. You know.
Like, but if you kind of took it easy,
right?
You know, I've known a couple vegans.
Mm-hmm.
Not.
I tried vegetarian for like 8 months. It was hard. I could never eat salmon again. I just did like pescatarian to get some type of like protein. So I guess not even vegetarian, pescatarian.
I've known some rather aggressive vegans, and being like, you know, if you were a lot cooler about people eating less meat or being just like vegetarian, that would be better overall for the world. And I think if everyone was just a little bit better about making those choices in their more day-to-day life of like you said, we consume ethically differently, you know, and like there's been video games, as you know, I'm a big video game guy, and there's been companies that have come out recently, like I don't know if you ever heard of Bobby Kotick. He was the CEO of Activision, people who make Call of Duty. And I really like Call of Duty, have for a long time, but then all this stuff came out about how he like underpaid a lot of all of like the production staff, how he sexually assaulted a lot of, you know, women. Yeah, like all this like big business stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to play those anymore. And they make billions of dollars a year. They're the best selling thing in the world. Am I making a difference? No.
That's how you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the difference.
If you can sleep a little better making these decisions, then that's worth it. And then if enough people are making those decisions all the time, then you can actually affect change.
I mean, because I saw this when you brought up like the vegans and stuff, and I think there's extreme aggressive people on whatever side, but it was like I wouldn't say it was like a protest, but someone was outside a restaurant, and I don't know if he was saying like, you just ate dog. Like he had this whole thing and it looked legit, and it was like, oh, was it good? And they're like, yeah, it was so good. He's like, oh, cool. It was dog. And they were like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah, like, what's the problem? He was like, oh, I don't want to eat dog. But you would eat a cow. Like, we have them in these nice farms and they're raised good. Like, he gave the exact same scenario, and you could see some people be like, I mean, I get what you're saying, man, but it's a dog. And he's like, but no, but it is no difference. It's meat. Just because you've kind of made this thing your pet doesn't mean, it's any different.
Yeah, to those, it's like it's more or
But he was being really nice and like matter of fact about it. And so people, and then he would eventually say like, hey, I'm with whatever, and we're just trying to show you that it is the same exact thing, eating any type of meat. And there were a few people that were like, hey, man, I really get it. Like, I get that. And so I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I say the same thing. Like, I don't think we have any right to say like, I like the fun question of, like, if you could eat human meat, would you try it at least? And I'm like, yeah, I would, because I have the audacity to try every other meat. So I don't think there's, like, a line we've already not crossed just because it's human. You know, if I could ethically, hey, Bessie, I have to get my arm amputated, but I'm going to keep the good meat and cook it. Would you try it? Yeah, I would. But you see the comparison I'm making? Like, there is no difference in, like,
no, it's just
ethics.
really weird because my D&D group was having this conversation like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, this exact conversation, and we were going in depth because I have a friend who was like full on, no matter what, he would do it. He would eat human meat.
I would try it,
100%. And then I was like, if the person didn't die,
right, like if you know it's not bad meat, then I'd again, like, it's still meat, you know.
And then we found out that apparently there was this Japanese artist. I guess it was a famous story, I hadn't heard of it, who for an artistic piece cut off his penis, cut it up, cooked it, and then fed it to people who paid like $2,200 a plate. Like they know they were eating penis. Yeah, they were eating the novelty of eating human meat, and it was this.
I don't know if I'd want to eat a penis,
person's
but
penis.
I guess maybe a piece of a calf or something.
Yeah.
That is crazy. I'll never look that up. But again, even back to my...
It's just really weird that this has now come up again in such a short period of time.
But I was going to say, it's the same thing with my art, like Oddities art. People are just like, for the most part, I get good reactions of like, wow, that's beautiful. It's creative, you know? My idea is we all die. Some of us get to live on as art, you know? But I've seen people online leave horrendous comments like, oh, you're either a fucking killer or a psycho. But I'm just like, I'm finding this animal passed away already. I'm memorializing it. I'm letting it live on. But again, you can eat meat from all these slaughterhouses. You can beat your dog. You can let your neighbor leave your... You know, like, it's like, how are you ethically saying or morally saying I'm fucked up for making art out of dead things, but you let all these other heinous things happen and don't say anything about it?
Yeah.
You know?
I think a big part of that, and actually trying to talk to someone about, consuming things ethically, is that we get defensive.
Of course.
And whether it's an attack or not, you're just like, oh, what about this? What about that? What about this? And they're like, and then you will in turn defend to make yourself feel better and make yourself sleep at night easier.
Yeah, it's hard to realize those things.
Yeah,
I get that.
I think, like, I also think you have to be in a certain position to be able to afford that point of view and that option.
Yeah.
Like,
Definitely.
I don't have a lot of money.
Right.
I'm not as worse off as a lot of people in this world. But I'm downright poor most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And like, do I try all the time, to be like, I don't want to buy this because I hear this bad.
Yeah.
When I can, I will.
Right.
But
not always an option.
Yeah,
of course.
For tons of people in the world, like in this movie, this growing poor class, you don't have an option to survive of like...
Yeah, they're living like in a community of tents because no one can afford to live in a house.
Yeah.
Like they just live day to day.
You think whenever they're on that, like the food line, they're like, are these organic potatoes?
No, exactly. You're like, thank God I'm eating.
Exactly. And, I think...
And who's taking care of you other poor people because the rich don't give a fuck about you.
Yeah. And I think in the real world, that's kind of how it is for a lot of people is, you have to...
That's why it's not fair to, I think, talk or comment on people who may be bigger or unhealthy, because it's like, well, that's what's fucking cheap.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anyone says. If that's what feeds your kids or you, that's what you eat. So you don't really get a say in, you should eat better, when it's like, well, I can't afford it.
Yeah. If
like salads at McDonald's are more expensive than a McDouble. Like, you can't tell me they aren't doing that on purpose.
I think it's like, if a vegetarian starts yelling at me to be like, hey, you shouldn't eat meat, I'm like, well, I can get like 10 pounds of meat that will last me a month or 2 weeks to a month for like $20,
right?
Versus
having to make all these
be
meals.
Like $20 of produce is not 2 weeks to a month's worth of produce, if it even could last that long.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's all just like, if you're in a position where you can afford ideals,
of course,
that's great.
Yeah.
Follow them, listen and live by them. But understand that putting those ideas on others, like moralistically, right? That's a word. Moralistically. Morally.
Should be if it's not.
Morally.
Yeah.
That's the real word.
That's the real word. But moralistic, we trademark that too.
Yeah. Trademark TM. We own it. You use it.
It's us.
You better be in the Patreon tier. Like morally, I'd like to say, or that I would say, hey, killing someone's wrong.
Right.
You should never kill someone. In the real world, I'm like,
it's you or me.
I was just like, that Luigi guy,
Yeah.
you know, suffering from a chronic condition, and his mother had a chronic condition for most of her life, then most of his life,
and he even came from a very privileged
but he just
lifestyle.
They were privileged, but they had chronic conditions and dealt with it.
Exactly.
And like, should he have killed that guy? Morally, I say no. Realistically,
you can understand why.
Yeah, I could go. Was he in a position to where there was another way? I mean, maybe, but was there another way that, someone who's living off of food pantry donations to not eat meat or organic or locally sourced stuff? Yep. Can they? No, they can't.
No. It's a privilege.
Yeah,
It's a privilege to do anything that makes your life easy.
Exactly. And I think I think it's the beauty is in trying.
Exactly. Because that's all you can do.
There was this line that we said before the show that like I wanted to talk about, because a lot of this show has turned into talking about how businesses suck, which they do. But like the whole line of, we gave the mills a break and they gave themselves bonuses of.
And anyone that works for any corporation feels that, whether it's Chipotle, McDonald's, Whataburger, Walmart, Target. It's all that. A billion-dollar company that pays their people the bare minimum.
And the higher you go, the more money you get paid, and the lower you go, the more you get a pizza party.
Exactly. And the more they're like, we're family, we just love you so much, we take care of each other, and then shit on you.
I didn't hear that shit and didn't know that was a thing until I started working at Chipotle. And because like I had always worked, like labor jobs, physical jobs. And let me tell you, those jobs do not call you family.
No.
They go, you're lucky to work and to get paid, here you go. And if you're real good, maybe my wife will let you have some of the corn she cooked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then after that, it was like I worked at like a shitty call center, which they didn't care.
No company actually cared.
Yeah. And then this
like big company.
Yeah. They didn't even have they didn't care enough to put on the guise of caring. They didn't care business wise because they knew it was a revolving door. They're like, we're not even going to try. But that's all that stuff is. It's just like, we want you to think, to try to tell you that it's family, because we don't want you to, we want you to put up with stuff because you put up with family.
I was going to say, because, family treats you like shit because they think, oh, you have to put up with me because we're related, where if you were a stranger, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
And you put up with more stuff, or you would take less,
or they know you can't.
Or you wouldn't go to the police or, or complaining about it.
Or they know you can't afford to not have this job. So they're like, well, I'll just treat you like shit because I know you can't really go without being paid the few bucks I give you.
And
that's why if you have the privilege to be in a position to work for a small business and actually feel like what that's like to like work for people that are also working as hard as you, for yourself, that's when I think you really start to see the different sides of it. Like, I worked at Supercuts and Sport Clips. It was a revolving fucking door. They didn't give no fucks about you. And that's how it was. And then I worked for a small business where it was just two sisters that worked just the same hours we did. And it wasn't the customer's always right. It was, you guys come first. You work here. We know what it's like to stand and cut hair all day.
We can find more customers.
Right.
We can't find more people like you.
Exactly. And or like I have an older client. He just retired at like 65. He worked at this company for like 40 years. And they're like, yeah, and they gave me a $25 gift certificate and a thanks card. And it's like, that's what you are to them.
Yeah.
That is it.
At least back in the day, they give you a gold watch.
Yeah, not even that.
They were complaining about that back then.
And he was just like, and that's all I was to them. I said, yeah, and it's kind of like this idea I had when I had this really intense shroom trip, and I was just like...
Radical.
Sitting in my apartment, and I was just like, what is the point of all this? Like, I'm working so hard to have this apartment to, like, live... When I would just die tomorrow, my job would replace me, this apartment would fill this room, and it would mean nothing. You know, so it's like, don't give your life to a place if you don't have to, who doesn't give a fuck about you.
Yeah. To me, the only...
But again, that's a privileged mindset.
Yeah. That's the thing, is the only caveat I could think to that, because I'm 100% the same way.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, if you work for a business, fuck them. You know?
Yeah, like you said, we had that episode with White Lotus. Like, you pay me the minimum, you get the bare minimum.
Yeah, fuck them. You know? Minimum otherwise, because that's no matter what is their position. There may be people in that job that don't feel that way. I can say without a doubt that whenever I was a manager, I cared about my employees to the point where I was like, I would get fired. They were right, because I cared more about them than the company did.
But caring people don't own these big companies. You don't become these big positions without shitting on other people.
Exactly.
It's the same with having a lot of money. Like, if I had all that money, I even like joke around like, oh, I would donate to here or help all these animals. And people that have money don't think like that. That's why they have a lot of money.
Exactly. And I don't know. I think it's just, or I guess once you have kids, also,
right? Lots
you
off the table. Yeah.
You start having to, you have to make a lot of sacrifices.
That's another thing I think they want.
Yeah.
I think they want poor people.
Reproduce.
Yes, reproduce, and they want poor people to have kids so they can just be that working class for you that will never talk back, that will never be disobedient, that will just work for McDonald's for 50 years and never move up.
Because no matter what, you need to feed this for the next 18 years. Exactly. You are responsible for feeding this kid.
Oh, and we're not going to give you accessible insurance or birth control, and so you'll just have 5 kids. Yeah. And they'll all just be our next employees. And that's fucked. And again, there's more of us than them. If we just all could somehow realize that, you know.
I think it's, I don't know if realization is happening right now, but I do think we are getting to a precipice of consumption to where there's a level of profit and a level of expectation that comes with, especially at least being an American consumer.
Yeah.
That the money that we make is now too low past the point of companies' expectations for profit.
Yeah.
To where you see them now having to start implement, because things haven't gotten more expensive for companies. They've only kept making more and more money.
Exactly.
You can go look it up. They just keep making more money.
They just want to keep more of it.
Yeah, they want to keep statistically making that more money. But now, we as a people, we are starting to hit a point where we can't consume as much as we want because we don't have the resources to do it.
Yeah, we're not getting paid enough to.
Yeah. That now, like, you know, like food, you see all these people, like Sebastian, he was going off of me about this, about Subway, about how Subway has lost so much money this past year that they've had to have like emergency sessions because it's.
I saw something saying they had like $6 something back. And I'm like, that must be it.
Yeah, they brought that back. Like McDonald's brought back, I guess, some famous value meal.
Okay.
Taco Bell brought back this like famous cheap box and all this. Like all these fast food places.
Yeah.
They were like the first wave of these companies that have always kept making more and more money. Be like, oh shit, they can't consume us anymore.
Right.
If we're not at a point where they can buy us, we won't make any money.
Yeah.
Shit.
And we're not going to pay them more, so I guess we'll just bring it back.
Yeah, we have to bring it back.
Which I think, like we talked about in our COVID episode, I think that was also exactly something we mentioned where people were realizing, I don't want to work that shitty job for minimum anymore. Or I'm not going to come in when you want me to just because someone else called out when you don't pay me enough to do more than the bare minimum. I think it's that whole, like, this generation's lazy. And it's like, no, we just don't want to work our fucking lives away for nothing.
Yeah. Be like, you got to work your life away and got something out of it. You got a home.
You got a home, a car, a family, a retirement plan, insurance. We don't get any of that.
We barely get to live, and they want us to throw more of our life into that.
Exactly.
Or nothing more.
Nothing more. To push our Social Security later and later.
Exactly. Not even like you get extra. You get nothing.
No, you get nothing.
You know, because at least in Texas, like they've made they only work you 30 because if you go to 40, they have to legally pay you overtime. So full time in Texas is 30, so they don't have to pay you overtime.
That's fucked.
And it's like,
so this movie really hits for a movie in the 80s when it's unfolding of what Reaganomics would have maybe started looking like already into 2025, and how we're seeing like this is the same fucking shit.
Did you said that you watched this with a big group of people?
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard the line, but at the end where they're at like the ball, the gala for all of the rich elite who
that
are
working with the
stuff,
aliens. Yeah.
In the head alien speech that he's giving, he says, by our projected year 2025, we'll have I thought that shit blew my mind.
What?
And I was like, oh, I hope Bessie sees this because that was crazy.
No. I think I was more just like, look at this fucking group of people working with these aliens just for money. Because I knew Holly was fucking part of it.
Yeah, like that.
At first, I was like, okay, maybe she's not. Maybe she is.
I didn't expect the bum who
like
takes him around.
Not at all.
That one.
But again, anyone can be bought.
Yeah.
Like people can be bought for horrendous things because it's just what's convenient for them.
And I hate how realistic they do, because even in that speech that the guy gives at the end of the movie, he doesn't say they bought them out.
No, he doesn't.
He's like, your annual income has increased by 38%. That was all it cost for these people to sell their souls, their planet, their species, was 38% more money. And
like, knowing their idea is total domination.
Yeah, and it's like that's all you got. But yeah, like that, and then him being like, by 2025 we'll have completed our total thing, and I was like, what?
Yeah, literally, that's crazy. I can't believe I missed that.
And I was like, I can't believe that we ended up doing the show.
But that's the times where people think like, oh, the 2020s will be futuristic or some shit, you know?
And I mean, some stuff is.
For sure.
I don't know how long we've gone, but I did think.
An hour?
You know how a lot of this is, a lot of the subliminal messaging.
Yes.
That is shown throughout this movie is all like magazines, billboards, stuff typical of the 80s.
Yeah.
I was thinking like we kind of fell into that, but maybe not as apparent in the movie because it's science fiction and it's crazy. But we do fall into that.
It's pretty close.
Yeah, with like personal technology.
Yep. Algorithms.
Yeah. Like think about the biggest jumps in day-to-day technology, and like what are they actually presented to you as? Freaking my smartwatch, cell phones, cars,
especially cars.
And it's like, oh,
they're smart everything.
Exactly.
Refrigerators, microwaves, dishwashers.
Yeah, all this personal electronic stuff, and it's like all just to like constantly cycle advertising.
Yep.
Because the smarter you can make something, the smarter you can advertise.
Or they make things to not last as long because, oh, we want you to keep buying more, so we can't give you a microwave that lasts your whole lifespan, so we'll make it last. Like the fact that there's actual people that work for companies being like, how can we make these eventually stop working slowly so they have to repurchase a new one? Like that's a thing, and that's crazy.
Like we need to balance when this breaks to when we can advertise a warranty.
Exactly.
To what percentage of people will actually take us up on these things, and it's like, and finding the maximum profit line.
Exactly.
And
it's all about profit. That's all people care about.
I wonder where we would be, because you said like 2025 is the future.
That's what a lot of like the 80s, 70s kind of like movies talk about. Like, oh, in 2020s will be flying cars and shit like that,
How futuristic do you think we would be if instead of focusing on like individual growth and consumption, if it was like all societal,
I think it'd be a lot more emotional development. So we would be happier and healthier in that form to where we wouldn't need all this extra shit to, like, take up our space with that, because we just can't function being quiet or in our own thoughts, you know?
No, I can't.
Exactly. So, like, that's... I think if we didn't have this type of technology, that's where it could have gone with, like, healing, in a sense.
I think...
like a community thing.
I think we could have... To me, if we weren't so focused on, like, individual growth and consumption, we'd probably be in space. You know? Probably be fucking around in space hard.
Not hard.
And... I remember there's this show called Stargate.
I've heard of it.
Oh, wow.
I've heard of it.
Shit, man.
I got some clients that like that shit. They talk to me about it still.
But there's this race of people in Stargate, and they like... I remember whenever I was a kid, and I would watch the show with my dad, and like, they all lived like it was like olden times, like in stone buildings, huts, all this stuff. Like, they all lived like it was almost like Roman times.
Yeah.
But they had laser guns and spaceships and all this stuff. And I remember asking my dad, like, why do they have spaceships but they live in huts? And they're like, well, because... And then he said, well, everything they have goes to the rulers. And I was like... And I've never not thought about that. Of like... If
who's profiting off of it.
Yeah. Not just who's profiting off of it, but like... At what point does the level of advancement only benefit, like, the crazy elite that eventually...
The 1%.
Yeah. But that's the thing is, like, at what point does that 1% become 0.5%?
Yeah.
1%? Where it really is just
not going that way.
But, I don't know, like, you think that we'll just end up killing each other, or you think that it will turn into, like, this... hut-based system of like, yeah, we live in huts and they live in spaceships?
I think we'll all kill each other before then.
Yeah.
We're already there.
That's true.
We're too divided. So we'd have to go back to like Stone Age, technology to probably...
even out.
Yeah. But how many times can we even say that's happened that we don't know of because of...
Yeah, because it all gets wiped.
Exactly.
You know?
Like, how many times have we done this and it's still like we aren't fucking learning?
Right, like all of our stuff is on computers, and it's like,
everything.
if you took an SD card, and even if you managed to save one for 1,000 years, you think they could read the data off that shit?
Exactly.
You know, they're like, no. They'd be like,
what the fuck is this?
They'd be like, is this a chunk of something? What the
Well, they'd probably eat it.
Yeah.
No, but I think this was a great movie to get into, and it really relates way more than you think it would, especially for like an 80s film. So John Carpenter was definitely
ahead of his time.
His perspective was there, and
it was,
like you said, ahead of his time.
It's a little depressing of how much this hit homes today.
Yeah, and how long, if it was hitting back then already and it's still now, it's just like, oh, fuck.
Like, damn. Had 40 years to get this shit right.
So I hope you guys have enjoyed this and really maybe taken a different look on what you're consuming, what could ever maybe even possibly ethically consuming, and to, eat the rich.
Yeah. Try your best, eat the rich, and learn from this movie and fight your friends for a minimum of 15 minutes.
Because I'm here to what?
I'm here to chew bubble gum and kick ass.
And I'm all out of bubble gum.
All out of bubble gum.
Well, thanks for coping with us, guys.
Thanks for coping with us.
Be safe, and we'll see you next episode.
See you next time. Check us out on YouTube, Patreon, podcast services around the globe.
Share us. It's free. Like us, comment, subscribe.
Devote yourself. Give us $1.
All right, guys. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.